Okay, this is not a solo act, so if the rest of the panelists could come to the stage, that would be fantastic. All right, as we're getting settled in here, the future of agriculture is today's panel, and I want to start by just thanking everyone who's had a hand in planning today's event, and thank you for giving us such a narrow topic to consider. Appreciate that. But I do think that this group is up for the task, and we have a lot of different perspectives and backgrounds that are being represented with this collective group here on stage, and we'll start with some introductions. First, I want to tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Cynthia Bruno, and I have the pleasure of leading Early Ag. We, as I like to call ourselves, are a commercialization special task force. Our goal is to be a fractional commercial arm for scale-up and startup companies entering the U.S. ag ecosystem, or established companies that are trying to do a product or technological launch. And our goal is to really help them find market traction through leveraging our network for success and really getting to strategic deals. And I'm so glad to be joined by the three folks who are with me on stage. We have Kip Pendleton, who is joining us. We have Daphne Preuss, and we have Betsy Dirksen Londrigan. And we are going to start now with some introductions. And I think really quickly, something that grounds all of the panelists on stage today are maybe two things. Number one, there are a lot of challenging things facing agriculture right now. But number two, within those challenging issues is real opportunity. So if you could all start by, Daphne, we'll start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what brings you to today's panel.
All right, well, great to be here. Nice to see all of you, and thanks for the invitation. My background was in R&D. I'm a geneticist, spent a lot of years in crop breeding, and then spun a company out of a university just a little bit north of here, University of Chicago. But we made that company work because we were able to come to Enterprise Works and use their ag facilities. Chicago's not a place where you grow a lot of crops, and we were focused on ag. So we're always going to be grateful to this community. After growing that company, it was a seed and breeding company to a couple hundred people. Then we sold it. And since then, I've been working with entrepreneurs and really pleased to be part of the Enterprise Works community here and helping a lot of the startup companies, including Forage Bee, which we just saw. So thrilled to watch a number of people make their journeys from innovation to commercialization to a successful business.
Excellent, Daphne, thank you. Kip.
Hi, I'm Kip Pendleton. I'm the president and CEO of the Pendleton Group. We're out of Minneapolis. It's great to be back here. This is home for me. I grew up 2 miles east of Urbana, out on the old state road that Lincoln used to travel to do the courts in Danville. But it's great to be back here. I grew up out on the South Farm with my dad as he was doing items. And when we weren't at the South Farm, we were at home at our farm from that standpoint. Agriculture has been great to me, as it is to many of you in the room. It's been ever changing. If you think about agriculture, we adapt and we evolve. And I've been happy to be a part of that. I currently serve as a chairman of a spin-out of the University of Minnesota called Yord Bioscience. It's like maybe some of you in the group, a group that's working forward. I can speak firsthand to what Early Ag does. They're a partner to Yord and do great work for us from that standpoint. And then the other group I'm involved with is Permanent Farming, or Pergena. We are taking clean manure from beef feedlots, producing energy from it, and producing a biofertilizer from it. I think as you think about all the acres that we have in corn and soybeans now, we need to find new uses, or we're going to have less acres. And so the opportunities are abounding and in front of us, and I'm glad to be here today. Thank you.
Excellent. Kip, thank you. Betsy.
Okay, it is on. Hi, I'm Betsy Dirksen Londrigan, and 1993 graduate from the University of Illinois. And for those of you who are not from Central Illinois, I am born and raised here, about as Central Illinois as it gets. One side, my family came for the coal mines. and the other are farmers just between here and Springfield, Illinois, over in Niantic. And I most recently served as a presidential appointee to the U.S. Department of Agriculture. First, I served President Biden under Tom Vilsack as the Illinois Director for Rural Development, and then more recently as the National Administrator for the Rural Business and Cooperative Service Agency. And so my heart is really in rural development. That mission area is devoted to improving the quality of life and economic opportunities for people who live in rural areas. And the rural business cooperative service side, we were like the business side of the mission area. So you think guaranteed loans, grants, value-added producer grants. And one of the most amazing things that I got to see across the nation is all of the emerging technology around biofuels, renewable chemicals, and bio-based products. And so now, as a private citizen, I founded Lincolnomic Growth Strategies to really serve as a connective tissue between businesses, finding locations, strategic partnerships with, with the growers. And to me, the bioeconomy, and really to all of us, right? It's a different type of industry. Farmers are not just suppliers. They are the critical component in any long-term success. And so really establishing those partnerships that benefit the producers and the rural communities and keeping that forefront is going to be really important as we explore this opportunity, which I think is the greatest opportunity rural areas are going to see for positive economic development.
Okay, thank you all. Let's start by talking a little bit about what are some of the major shifts that each of you sees happening in agriculture right now. And Kip, if you don't mind, I'll pick on you first. But talk to us a little bit about, from your standpoint, when you're working with leadership of the different companies that you're involved in, what are the major shifts that you're seeing?
Yeah, so the first is the cost perspective, right? We are an industry that is a price taker in some ways, but that creates opportunities for us to create more value add opportunities. And I think we're really although we're in a down cycle, if you look at the history of agriculture, down cycles create the next winners. And down cycles create new structures for industry and new opportunities for those that are in the industry. So as we work with groups, we try to talk about not the bad things, but where are we going to go? And I would challenge everybody here at this conference, bring 3 strategies away that you're going to go back and work on from that standpoint. Don't take 300, which you'll probably hear here, but take some that can be actionable. And that's the advice we give to farmers, to boardrooms, is take 3 steps forward.
Excellent. And Daphne, you're in this world of trying to figure out what those 3 steps need to be for folks who are navigating this change. Help us understand what kind of advice you're giving the companies that you're working with right now as they're navigating these challenges.
Right. Well, I think the small companies for a while thought of the customer as the large multinational ag companies. And that has worked, but it's really important to think further about what the grower really needs and present your technology as a return on investment for a grower. So it's knowing that ultimate customer and really understanding. I think Kip made the point very well. This is a time when economic pressure on farmers is just unbelievable. And I come originally from a farming family. For a long time, if you were asked, what are you growing? It was often, well, my dad grew this, my grandfather grew this, and this is what I'm doing. Stability is gone now, and those dependable markets have really shifted. And so I think growers need to think about diversifying. They need to think about demanding lower costs and asking the companies selling to you, what's the return on my investment? Because innovators are coming out with things that are amazing. And I think being on the early side of that adoption, as opposed to thinking about what happened 2 generations ago, think about where we're going. And there's some real opportunity.
Got a follow-up question to that, because I think you've hit on something that we've seen in the startup and industry for a long time, which is that there's this gap that exists between the idea and the innovation and then understanding how the end customer is going to receive that or view it or use it. What are some practical strategies that people in this room can take away for closing that gap?
For the small companies, go to the conferences where farmers are. So this would be things like Commodity Classic, where you're interacting with growers, as opposed to just going to VC-based kind of events. I think you've got to really, many small companies have people in them that come from farming, but nowadays, a very small number of people have actually really experienced farming. So you've got to connect with that ultimate customer and really understand what matters. And it's really hard for researchers who don't have that experience to develop something that really has real impact and meaning. So I think that's what you got to do, is get out and network.
Yeah, farmers will tell you what they think, and we should view that as a gift, by the way.
Absolutely.
I think. Betsy, you talked about the incredible importance of rural economic development, and that's powered so much by the farmers and end consumers that we're talking about here. How can rural economies win, even with all of the challenges that they're facing right now?
Well, right now, if we're looking at the bioeconomy globally, right? There's World Economic Forum is saying it's a $4 to $5 trillion global economic impact, and by 2050, it should be between $40 and $50 trillion. So we know that there is opportunity there. How are we going to get that, and who's best positioned? And when we're looking at how you break down the bioeconomy, biodiesels, renewable chemicals, and bio-based products are currently the smallest segment of that, meaning the largest opportunity for near-term growth. And so there is no place that is better positioned to take advantage of that than Illinois. We have the opportunity, we have the R&D. We are going to be able to, these businesses are going to be able to scale all the way through, which is absolutely incredible that we're going to have that here. And then so people can develop the technology, they can grow it, they can commercialize it, and they can do it all right here where they've got the access to capital, the transportation, the workforce. And it's us, putting all those pieces together, and that's where the opportunity lies, because those businesses will perform best when they are located near the feedstock. And all of those, the economy is circular. The farmers do well, the community does well. That's the way it goes.
I want to touch on access to capital a little bit and public capital at that. So one of the things that I think has been a challenge is navigating some shift in policy. How should people and business owners and rural communities, how should we be thinking about those shifts? And what advice would you be giving to people who are trying to figure out how to best navigate that?
Sure, it's always, it all comes down to your capital stack, and there are still great programs that are still being funded. So, for example, within U.S. Department of Agriculture, there is still the biorefinery, renewable chemical, and bio-based product guaranteed loan for up to $250 million. In addition to that, there is a up to $10 million grant program. So if you qualify for the guaranteed loan, then you have access to what's called the Bio-Based Market Access or Development and Access Program. And that's something that actually my colleague Greg Jaffe, who is here, he and I worked on the Secretary Vilsack during the Biden administration. And that's to help these businesses run their intermediate demonstration units, to help them scale up and cross that valley of death. So that's a really exciting program, and it is still funded. What people can do is try to push for that, because that was funded through the Commodity Credit Corporation. So people can push for and advocate for more funding for that to help businesses cross that valley of death. And of course, there are other program suites within U.S. Department of Agriculture. I would also encourage you to look at Department of Energy, who still has who in their Beto office still has grants, still has different loan programs. And then the state of Illinois has stepped up in such an impressive way and continues to step up with their clean energy funding grants and their innovation grants. And all of those between state and federal, they're all stackable. One does not nullify the other. In fact, they can actually act as matches to one another should that be needed. It takes a little homework. It does take a little homework, but there's people, like me who are here willing to help.
Excellent. Daphne, speaking of capital, so this is something that we've talked about and you've talked about navigating as well. When it comes to having these conversations about access to capital, I think a lot of what we have heard in the startup industry is try to hold on, we hope it's going to get better. Try to hold on, we hope it's going to get better. Tell us what you're seeing, and is it going to get better?
Yeah, it's been survival mode for a lot of startups for the last 2 to 3 years, and that's because a lot of venture capital has been on the sidelines. I think part of driving that was valuations were quite high, and people just have to come to terms with down rounds. So some of that capital is starting to flow in at a better pricing for the investor, but in the gap, what happened was a lot of companies reshaped their business plan. At one time, startups would get a lot of R&D funding and postpone revenue generation. Now they're finding ways to do service work before they have a product. So things like that bring in a bit of revenue. That's helpful. But the most exciting thing I'm seeing is the corporate entities are stepping in and stepping up. We see a lot of corporate VC that's very well advertised. Here we have Bayer here with the LEAPS program. Corteva launched Catalyst. Syngentis had a long-term VC. But what I'm seeing as well is a number of multinational companies that you wouldn't ordinarily think of that in the course of doing a commercial transaction with a startup, and that commercial transaction gives rights to some product or IP or process, they are doing a back-to-back equity investment. I think they're realizing that they need to keep the company alive. Frankly, they can't do work for you if you aren't funded. But secondly, it's a different source of funds from the large company financial. So the commercial deal is often coming off of an operating P&L where the equity investment's coming off the balance sheet. And a lot of large companies are sitting there with some cash. So I would say for the small company groups that are out there talking to big companies, it never hurts to ask, can we also couple this with an equity investment? And often it's on the level of 1 to 2 million. So it's not huge. But that is getting a lot of people through.
Okay. So I think, kind of a through line that we're seeing here is that there is opportunity. So Kip, when you think about what is the personality type of the companies that are going to find their way through this and not only survive, but really thrive, what is a company that's going to thrive doing right? What do they act like? How do they show up in the space?
I think, first of all, they solve a real problem. Part of our problem with funding is we had some companies that didn't really have well-defined problems that were a problem on the farm or a problem to industry. So if you think about solving real problems, then solve big problems, right? If you're a small niche, you're always going to be a small niche. If you can identify a big opportunity and you can work through that, you will have a number of people that'll be interested in it. I think there's a number of companies that still get funded. They get funded a little later, so you're going to have to bootstrap. You're going to have to be able to have that mentality to bootstrap, friends and neighbors and just hard sweat equity from that standpoint. But you're probably going to find a larger, or at least what I find, a larger first round, a larger A round than in the past, right? So it may not be $1 million or $2 million. It may be $5 to $10 million from that standpoint. But that means you're going to need to earn that from that perspective. You need to put together a good team. You need to be a team that is resilient. You need to be a team that can communicate. You need to be a team that talks about the importance of that problem that you're solving and the return that it will give to whoever your customer is. I didn't ask the question, but who's an actual farmer in the room today operating on a farm? Okay, got a few here. So, that's normal, right? 1% of the population is farming. You have to make sure you're connected, and you have to make sure you're solving a real problem, and that you're talking through that, and you can say, I was just talking to. If not, there's a retailer here. I know Paul Trainer's here somewhere with Trainer Ag. Paul is really connected with bringing value to his customers. He's really connected with what their problem is. So talk to people like that. Talk to people that serve a number of companies or a number of constituents at the farm level from that standpoint. But I think those are the things that are easily fundable. The people that are saying, we're going to solve this versus it's easy to get defeated. You will not get funded if you bring a defeatist attitude to the table. So you need to believe, and you need to convince others to believe.
Betsy, how does the rural economy play into this when you think about the challenges that maybe some of the innovation is not reaching the potential that would be brought to these end users who live in these rural economies? Talk to us a little bit about what that means for whether those economies can thrive.
So I think some of this goes back to like some of the leadership of the companies and their long-term success, and it really being tied to the rural economy and the communities. So these strategic partnerships that we're talking about can be done in different ways, right? Well, now I think that CoverCress is an excellent example where they, it's relationships that they set out early on, and that they were working with the farmers, and that they are, earned trust, spent time, and will be able to scale accordingly because they are bringing these folks along with them. That is a great way to do it. Another great way to do it is like a company out of Iowa, New Energy Blue, who is also in renewable diesels. So what they did is they formed an LLC called New Energy Blue Farmers. And so it's owned by the farmers it's a biomass aggregation corporation. So the farmers are profit sharing in the company's success. They are supplying the feedstock. And as the farmers are successfase, as they are adding revenue streams, as they are diversifying production and strengthening their base revenue, then all of that trickles over into the surrounding rural economy. And also, when we're talking about bringing manufacturers here, we're talking about jobs. So we're talking about jobs, we're talking about new revenue streams. That is how we truly, in the long term, build rural economies, in my opinion.
Let's talk about some of the bottlenecks that we might be facing in the agriculture industry right now. So Daphne, when you think about barriers, what types of barriers, what are the largest barriers that are preventing innovation from reaching its potential?
Oh, I think it does primarily boil down to capital. That has been a big impact, and there's a cascade of events when a company is starved for capital. They have a hard time hiring in full-time executives. So what I'm seeing a lot of is very senior people, maybe recently retired, have left some of the big companies as a result of the mergers. They're coming in for fractional roles in the small companies, so that's bridging that gap. But what it means is there's a whole generation of young people that are not getting hired because there just are not funded positions for them. So I think we're going to see also a human capital loss. And also would emphasize when you have fractional people coming in on Zoom meetings, it isn't really the best training environment for young, newly minted individuals who want to enter these companies. And so the whole, work from home thing is still having an impact as well, I think.
You have to be very, very intentional about how you would marry those two things together.
Absolutely, yeah.
Kip, Daphne touched on the reorganization that's going on across the ag industry. How do you think companies can keep innovating and keep, finding opportunities even while the reorganization is going on?
Yeah, it's the biggest thing to guard against right now, and I think the biggest bottleneck is, oh, sorry, we're in a reorganization. I can't make a decision now.
Yeah.
By not making a decision, you've made a decision. By freezing and not moving forward and keeping inertia going, that's a critical decision from that standpoint. I think reorganizations are always part of ag. You know, we have a changing of how ag is run and how ag is, and it'll continue to evolve. We've had mergers forever. We'll continue to have mergers. And how those shape and what they organize around will be key, right? So at every level, if you're at the farm or your next level up serving the farm, you have to be thinking about who serves you and who serves you best. And are they saying, well, sorry, we're in a reorg? That is probably not your best partner. Your best partner is, I understand, let me work on that with you, right? From that standpoint. And so if you're a startup and you're thinking about how to move forward, it can't be, I'm strained, I can't move forward. You have to move forward. And so that would be one of the advices I'd have is bottlenecks are always going to be there. How you manage those bottlenecks is going to show where you are obviously able to achieve and those that you're able to help.
It tests how compelling your position is in a lot of ways. Yeah.
No doubt.
Betsy, how about you? What do you think are the biggest bottlenecks facing ag innovation right now?
Access to capital it's huge. So one thing I would say to people looking, to figure out their capital, don't be afraid of going to government websites and looking for grants and guaranteed loans. Guaranteed loans are phenomenal, right? Because a bank that might not normally make a loan, if it's guaranteed by the government, it de-risks the loan for them, right? It's an opportunity for you, and it's an opportunity for them. And when I talk about the Rural Development Agency, right, it's not some black hole where you're going to call a 1-800 number. That's the beauty of rural development. They are in every state. They are real people. You will pick up they will pick up the phone. They will answer your call. They will meet with you in person. If you're here in Champaign, you can go about 1 mile over, and there is a staff there that is dedicated to helping you and answering your questions, and will guide you the right way. And I think that's a really important. Just don't be scared of looking at those things.
Do you find that that's what keeps a lot of people from accessing these opportunities?
Yes, absolutely.
Tell us more. Absolutely. Is it just nerves about it? Is it not knowing how to navigate it?
It's for a lot of people who haven't engaged with the government in that way before, it is very nerve-wracking because they want a lot of information and they think they're never going to have a chance to get it. And or they think they're calling a 1-800 number going to get some automated call. That's not the way that particular agency works. It is not my experience. And people get scared when you say federal government, especially in rural communities. And I'm saying don't be scared of it. These are real people who are from the communities that they're serving and who are there to meet with you in person. They will drive to you, right? They're all over the state, and they will talk to you about different business opportunities. Every state has its own rural development staff. There is a national staff too. Every state has its own staff, and they are dedicated to serving you.
I would also just add, I think a lot of, particularly academic spin-outs and startups, the team doesn't have the financial prowess to navigate a loan program. But there are many consultants out there. There are ex-USDA loan program consultants out there, and they can help you. So don't feel like you have to learn all the language about term loan and collateralized and all of those things. There are people who've been there and done it, and it's easier than you think. Yeah.
I want to follow up on that because I think you're bringing up a really good point, which is how do you shape a team around the right expertise that you need to move forward. And Daphne, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you navigate this with the companies you work with.
Yeah, well, okay, couple bits of advice. I think a lot of scientists, you went to a lab for PhD training, you went to a lab for postdoc training, you launch a company and you don't go anywhere for CEO training, and whether it's the investor or the company itself, there's kind of sometimes an implicit expectation that the leadership of the company should just know. And it is as complicated as anything in science. It's a whole different language. So I think one of the first things is know what you know what you don't know. Consider that there is a tuition payment, a price to pay for learning. And either you're going to pay it by slowness and mistakes and having to do it over, or you hire someone to do it. And a lot of these people that you hire will do it for equity. They will do it for deferred compensation. So you can write contracts that say, hey, when we get our money in, then I'll pay you. And there's just a lot of talent out there on the sidelines that can be pulled in to help you do that. So think about that, and then think about, is it worth your time to learn how to do this? Is it worth your time to learn how to figure out the right insurance policy to buy? Probably not. There's not a lot of value in that. So the things that you're going to do yourself and learn, make sure it's worth it. Otherwise, hire someone who knows.
Kip, I want to follow up on this with you because you've seen this from a board position, you've seen it from kind of an investing position, and I'm curious what kind of advice you give leaders as they're going through kind of an evolving process of seeing their business grow.
You can't learn fast enough, so collaborate. And you don't have to be expert on every single thing because there's rooms full of experts, right? Pick people that you can work with, pick people that you can move with, and trust. Trust is a two-way street, but if you don't trust somebody, that's not your partner. Move from that standpoint. We have a great founder at Yord Bioscience, Dr. Linda Kinkle, 34 years at the University of Minnesota, says she wants to found a company because her work, she's not sure she's really changing agriculture and helping farmers. She's been great at making those choices of people around her. She's the chief science officer, but the people that are around her are great collaborators. We've built a great board around her. And it's a point in make sure you have a team you trust and make sure you can move fast with that team.
All right, I want to talk a little bit about signals of the future now. So Betsy, I'll start with you. When you look at the ag landscape over the next year and a half, 2 years, what are some of the signals you're looking for that would tell you that agriculture is in its next phase of growth or innovation?
I'm really optimistic about with my answer is going to be very optimistic. But to me, it's not just about more biomanufacturing projects in central Illinois or in the Midwest. That's great. I want to see that. Don't get me wrong. But to me, I am looking for some language shift. I am looking for the way that some of our external partners talk about the bioeconomy, talk about biodiesels and renewable chemicals and bio-based products, and looking to see us talk about it in a way that, like, this bioeconomy, these are our bootstraps, right? This is us pulling up our bootstraps by digging in. This is us building our own new market, so we are not at the whim of any administration. This is us securing our supply chain. This is our opportunity. That type of language shift, where we're talking about it in those terms, that's what I'm looking for.
Kip, what are you looking for?
I think we're going to need to create an economy that stands on its own. And so I'm looking for not us saying, oh my gosh, look at the backlog that we have that we can't export.
Right.
I think we'll be able to export, but I think we need to create, and I think there's great opportunities in the biomanufacturing to create those and to go forward from. So I'm looking at that. I'm also looking at how and I'm interested in the conversations later about how we utilize AI. The Moore's Law said every 18 months we would double the chip speed. AI is 10x every 12 months. Think about that. You've heard about that up here on the panels. That is going to remake agriculture. I can't tell you how yet, but the speed of being able to solve the problem won't be the problem.
How do you think leaders can prepare themselves for that? or be doing that now?
Yeah, it's I get I'm blessed to meet with a lot of leaders, and there's two camps. We are all in on AI. Every part of our industry, every part of our business uses AI. We're looking constantly for that. And the other's like, we're going to get there. They're already out of the game and they don't know it. So from that perspective, there are many ways to use AI. Operationally, that's just a given. You should be using operationally because it can lower your cost. But innovation-wise, you talk to any breeder, it's amazing what it's been able to do, which says we'll have greater things coming faster, but are we ready for that? And are we training them on the right areas?
Daphne, what are the signals that you're looking for?
Well, I mentioned earlier that it's been really great to see a lot of corporations coming in and investing in small companies. You know, at one time, many of the corporations only worked with small companies when they'd matured enough to be ready for acquisition. And so the look at those companies, the diligence on those companies was really of a late stage kind of business. Now, with investing in earlier stage, large corporations are getting comfortable with evaluating technology before it even has revenue. And I think then that is setting up some learnings that are going to lead to a bunch of acquisitions. I mean, it's the kind of transition that pharma went through a few years ago, where it used to be the drugs were developed in-house in the large mega pharma companies, and so they had the whole vertical. Now I think the large ag companies are realizing that they're going to pull in innovation earlier at a stage where they can really be influential, rather than buying revenue or buying EBITDA profit. So, you know, it's I am watching for the M&A bubble to start popping. I think that's going to happen. Prices will not be the astronomical. I doubt we're going to see $1 billion ag startup exit anytime soon. It'd be great if we do. But I think there's a lot of return to early investors. Companies will benefit if they're not taking, you know, 50 million, 100 million of VC money. They might get exited with 5 to 10. You know, so that still gives a return for the venture community, the investment community, and allows the biggest companies to pull things in at a stage where they can really influence the growth and development.
Excellent. I think we have some maybe audience questions that have been submitted that we can get to. Laura?
This question is from Chris Pauling, who's a formulation scientist at Steppen. There has been much talk this morning about the importance, need, and opportunity for increased production of biofuels in ag. As more acreage is designated for energy crop production, how do you predict that will affect the production and economy of food crops in Illinois, in North America, and globally?
You want to try that one?
I think there's an excess right now of grain, right? It's reflected in our prices. How that leveling, it won't be an overnight, but over time that will move prices up, and it will take acres that'll be dedicated to that, or those acres will just leave production. If you look at the outer rings, not Illinois, not Iowa, not the I states, but if you look at the outer rings, there are significant acres already being pulled out. The Texas, 250,000 acres were pulled out of production this past year. That's how you'll kind of look at it. I don't know if I know the exact number that'll be shaped from that standpoint. Illinois, for a lot of reasons, has an ability to participate in a big way in that. I don't think it'll be the marginal states that'll be the biofuel states or the biomanufacturing states. I believe it'll be the core of the Midwest, the core of the production area where it'll be. So bad answer to a great question.
Daphne, Betsy, do you have any thoughts on that question?
I think he's got it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think he covered it. I think that if you look back at I don't think there's a food versus fuel problem anymore. I just don't. I think when you look at what like the Department of Energy put out their billion-ton study, and we have the biomass in the United States. We've got it. You know, getting it to production is where our bottlenecks are as a nation, right? Getting it through. But I don't think that's. I think that's separate from food.
Betsy, I think this question is geared towards you. Are some of these grants and loans available to existing small businesses in rural communities that are desiring to commercialize innovation, or are they only geared toward new startups?
They are absolutely eligible. Small businesses that are already in existence are absolutely eligible. There are a variety of grants. The value-added producer grant is one. If you are raising a product and making something else with it, there is funding available for that. There are quite a few different grant programs. And so what I would encourage you to do is to call your local rural development office. And if the great thing about them, and the business staff in particular, is that if they don't have something, they can also say, hey, you know, my partner over at SBA, at Small Business Administration, might have something. And they work so closely with the team at DCEO. Allie Grady was here earlier. She's absolutely phenomenal. Kristen Richards. Their team is constantly responding to business community about what they need in terms of funding through grants and loans. And they've always got new things popping. Start with rural development, make a phone call, have a meeting, and they'll guide you the right way.
And I think we have one more audience question.
What is the one essential skill you would recommend that we teach to our students who are interested in ag tech entrepreneurship?
Understanding financial statements.
And being able to communicate off of them.
Right.
That was a quick answer.
Yeah.
Rapid fire. Okay, to close things out, I'd like to start, Daphne, with one word here. The future of ag is what?
Being nimble.
Unlimited.
The bioeconomy.
Excellent. Thank you all for your time and attention. Thank you for your questions, and thank you, panelists.
Thank you so much to our Future of Ag panel. Very interesting and fun discussion, and uplifting too. So thank you very much.